Hey there, good people, and welcome back to the DNP podcast. I'm your host, Debo, and I'm ready for another week of NFL action. This week, we'll discuss the aftermath of Patrick Mahomes tearing his ACL and where that leaves the Chiefs going into the future. Also, the Miami Dolphins are seemingly at their wits' end of Tua after another disappointing performance on Monday night. And as always, the Pick 6, where I make 6 picks against the spread for this weekend's games. This pod is available on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts, so like, rate, subscribe, and all that good stuff so you can stay up to date with each upload. Well, that didn't go to plan. After weeks of banging the table that the Chiefs would make the playoffs, they got eliminated from playoff contention, losing 16-13 to the Chargers with other results not going into their favour, meaning the Kansas City Chiefs will miss the playoffs for the first time since 2014. That news, however, seems secondary due to the fact that Patrick Mahomes tore his ACL and MCL and is a doubt to be ready for the start of next season. So I can imagine as a Chiefs fan, or to be fair, as an NFL fan in general, because you want the great players, the ones who have GOAT contention or just the best of the best in the league. You hate to see such injuries, and I remember watching the video of the injury, and you just see that left knee twist, and it's damn it, like that's it, that's a bad one. At least the season's done. It was 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter when they're trying to drive to win it, like that. The game was done, the year was done, and then heck, even next year could potentially be done because you're tearing your ACL and also so 2 ligaments late in the year with 9 odd months of rehab. So the off season isn't really going to be rest and recovery. It's going to be rehab and making sure that you get prepared for the start of next season, which it does seem like is the intent for Mahomes, at least going into next year, that he is trying to get ready for week 1 and to make sure that his knee is fully healthy going into that, which I'll be honest, is that the best for you to take, potentially rushing yourself back to maybe lead to further injury? Who knows, right? Because in modern medicine, anything can happen, right? And when you're one of the guys, one of the best of the best, it's like you are not judged by the same standards as everyone else. So it's very possible that he could be fit and firing for week 1, but I'm not going to put my money on it personally. But what I do want to get into, and what I do want to put forth and say is the case for the Kansas City Chiefs, is that Mahomes' ACL is kind of a blessing in disguise for the Kansas City Chiefs going into the future, because now you get to this end of the season and you look, okay, what do we have? Who are the guys who could be, part of our next dynastic run, our next period of winning in Kansas City? Because, there are big decisions that need to be made for this team moving forward. You look at the fact that Travis Kelce's contract is expiring at the end of the season, and he himself is 36 years old, retirement on the corner. I believe there was even a quote said that the Chiefs, almost speaking of the Chiefs in the third person in regards to the Chiefs will get him back next year for sure, almost removing himself from what they're going to be going through next year. You look at Chris Jones as someone who can maybe be moved on because at his age, he's not going to want a wasted year. He's not going to want a year that's punted for the future, which is, again, when someone tears their ACL in mid-December, when you're talking about, the recovery time at best being the start of next season. You don't want a situation where, you start slowly next year and it's like, well, I'm 30 odd years old, I'm still performing at a high level by my standards. I'd rather go somewhere and be able to contend properly. And when you're Chris Jones, why not? You've clearly got the value there, and if you're the Chiefs, you've got the you've got a valuable asset that you can be moved on to. Again, move on for the retooling or rebuild or however you want to put it. And then McDuffie as well. Trent McDuffie's on his 5th-year option next year. So could you just shed that cap with a trade in the off-season, $13 million? Because again, if you're $45 million over the cap in 26 via overthecap.com, it looks like there is very much a situation that has to be considered when you're talking about trying to get yourself under the cap and then trying to, rebuild or reform a roster in a way that can make yourselves more viable to contend in the future if 2026 is a year that you can't really look at. Because you look around the AFC, you look at what, even in their own division, the Broncos, that defense isn't going anywhere. Bo Nix is getting better and better, so you have to consider that. You look at the Chargers and it's like, okay, this year they swept you without Rashawn Slater, and now Joe Alt is out. Like, next year they're going to get those two back, and they're going to have more capital in their door when it comes to the weapons around them and the defense. It's like this Chargers team isn't going away either. So if you're kind of putting spare parts from here and around there around Mahomes, like, this year's shown that that may not be the formula anymore. That may not be the way in which you're going to get things done, because the division's fighting back now, unlike they were in previous years. So other than that, the Patriots, the Bills are still there. The Ravens aren't likely to be this bad next year. The AFC South has got 3 big hitters now, or at least 2 moving forward, because you consider whether the Colts' quarterback situation is troubling, but Trevor Lawrence is playing his best football. The Texans' defense, and now CJ Stroud is playing at a high level. Like, you can't kind of Mahomes and Inshallah, if you want to put it that way, in terms of just him being the Superman when it counts and getting the wins, because it's proven this year that's not going to get it done anymore. So there is something to consider from Kansas City. But again, when I refer to it as a blessing in disguise, you look at, I'm just going to pull up this decade's draft positions with regards to the Kansas City Chiefs. You look at 2020, 32nd overall pick, coming home in the Super Bowl, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. That didn't go great. 2021, they traded that first rounder for Orlando Brown Jr., who at the time was a really good tackle, is currently in Cincinnati. 2022, 30th overall pick, George Karlaftis, who got the second contract, fair play. 2023, 31st overall picks, Felix Anudike Uzoma. That was the last pick of that round because the Dolphins had their pick forfeited. So again, we're talking about the end of the first round where you're unlikely to get those real game changers. 2024, they've got Xavier Worthy. Now, he's taking his time. He's had moments, but again, when you look at earlier in the rounds when there was, I believe that was Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, even Brian Thomas Jr. earlier in that round. Like, you're not in that range to really get that type of player. Josh Simmons, 32nd overall pick, who was a great tackle, but the reason he drops that far is because of injury concerns, and in his rookie year, he has shown those injury concerns to be valid. So now 2026, it looks Tankathon has them 11th overall pick. Currently, they're definitely going to be in and around that top 10 to get a more valuable, or it's more likely to get that real game change. You talk about their running game, which has been poor in Mahomes' tenure. Like, Jeremiah Love will very much be in that range from Notre Dame, who's had a very good season there, was a Heisman finalist, which is the MVP of college essentially. So he could easily come in and be a game changer for them and make Mahomes' life easier, because heck, coming back from an ACL, that is going to be an important part of the future, getting a proper running game behind Patrick Mahomes. So that's the case not even just in the first round in terms of picking earlier in the rounds, but second, the third. You're going to be in a better mix when it comes to the pool of college players that you're drafting to where you can really supplement this roster with some young, youthful blood that can really change the fortunes for the Chiefs moving forward. So as much as it sucks now in regards to, your star quarterback tearing his ACL, like, there is the way American sports are built, that silver lining of, okay, we can almost, like the Warriors did in basketball, take a year or two off and supplement this roster with valuable members to make sure that when our GOAT comes back, that he has the horses ready to go fit and firing. And that is, that's on Brett Veach to be able to do that. I'm sure, there have been, like George Karlaftis, worth the second contract. So he has shown that he can draft well. It's just on him to, with the advantage of the earlier pick in the round, to supplement Mahomes with what he needs. And speaking of Mahomes now, and just the Chiefs in general, this era, this part of the dynasty is seemingly over because, again, Kelsey retiring, like Mahomes ACL, it seems like a very real sort of a line of demarcation moving forward. And when you look at from Mahomes starting, in 2018 till now, talking about 7 straight AFC championships, 5 Super Bowl appearances, 3 Super Bowl wins, Mahomes and Kelsey being the leading duo for touchdowns, quarterback to receiver or tight end in playoff history. Like, there's a real legacy there that has been built. And whether to say that the complete Chiefs dynasty is over, I won't go as far to say that, because the Patriots dynasty, you could easily say from 2001 to 2019 when Brady eventually left to Tampa Bay. So a Patriots dynasty that even had 10 years between Super Bowl wins. So I wouldn't say that the Chiefs dynasty is over. I know a lot of people, maybe just haters, you could say, or ones who aren't the biggest fans of the Kansas City Chiefs in general, ones say, oh, the dynasty's dead, yip, yip, hooray. And sow your horses, people. There is very much a dynasty that still could be maintained, as I mentioned earlier, with getting, the potential new horses coming through. So it's very interesting, and want to, look at what Mahomes and Brady look at in comparison to their points at this point of their career. Because you look at the passing yards comparison, Mahomes got 9,000 yards on Brady at this point in their careers, 9 seasons in. He's got 70 more touchdowns. He's got 1 less interception. Now, granted, Brady's 9th season was a half, because that's when he tore his ACL. But even if you remove Mahomes' touchdowns or passing yards from this year, he still has 6,000 yards on Brady at this point in their careers. Obviously, Brady came on a bit later in their career, but that's kind of the point I want to make, is that in terms of the GOAT debate, it's not, okay, this is dead. 3 Super Bowls, like Mahomes can't catch up to Brady now. He very much can. It is very much on the cards that when Mahomes comes back, he can bring this team back to where, fit and firing and really going for the jugular as they were in the past 7 years, because, it just feels very premature to think, okay, this is now 10 years where the Chiefs aren't going to win Super Bowls, because they're the Chiefs, and 10 years is a very long time, as shown. Like, Mahomes hasn't even been in the league 10 years yet, so it's very possible that there is that second wind, that second life for the GOAT debate, at least in Mahomes' case. Like, he's not disqualified, he's not, out of the running. It's going to be a long road back for him. But again, Brady was able to come back fit and firing from the ACL. Obviously, different styles of play, but Mahomes has definitely grown in the cerebral sense, and the clutch sense is very much there for Mahomes as well. So it's going to be very interesting to see how things develop moving forward, but I would definitely say the lasting point is that the GOAT debate ain't over yet, and the Chiefs could still very much be the Chiefs when we get to late 26 and Mahomes could be back fit and fire and sneak into the playoffs, or very much 2027 because there's this is still the, if not one of the best quarterbacks of all time. Let's not forget that. Right, Monday night saw the end of the Miami Dolphins' slight playoff hopes as they lost 28-15 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. A game in which was 28-3 before a couple of consolation scores, so that 28-15 scoreline is even quite flattering. But after the game, head coach Mike McDaniel opened the door to a quarterback change after another disappointing game from Tua Tagovailoa. And today, as I'm recording this, it's been reported and announced that Tua is being benched, and Quinn Ewers, 7th round pick from Texas this past year, is the new starting quarterback. Now, what I'll say is, can you blame him? Can you blame Mike McDaniel for making that decision? I mean, Tua leads the league in picks. I mean, there's been a clear regression in Tua's level of play since McDaniel came in. You remember those first couple of years where it was fit and firing and 70 points and all that sort of stuff. And oh my God, the Dolphins' offense is unstoppable. And now it's, Tua just looks a bit lost out there. Look, he can't move. He's not really seeing the field well. He's throwing some, he's leading the league in picks, and he's throwing some real bad ones, like real obvious ones. Don't put the ball there, and he just does. And it's been a real, a sickening year from a Tua perspective because he's got the big deal, he had the big contract, and he's just not worth it. He's not worth getting paid $50 million a year to play quarterback in the NFL because he's just not that level raiser. He's not that good. You know what I mean? So it is very much a question and like an understanding of, there's no question. There is just, this can't keep going on. Like, there is the obvious ceiling because even in the years where the Dolphins were doing well, you'd get to the end of the season and they'd tail off a little bit, and then when the playoffs came around, they stank. Like, there was the year where he wasn't even healthy at that point, so Skylar Thompson starts against Buffalo and then they lose that one. And then he's healthy going into the next year, but he's up against the Kansas City Chiefs, and that was one of the coldest games in history, and it showed into his play. Like, he just wasn't competitive. It just wasn't enough. And you think about the fact that they bring the Tyreek Hill in, they bring OCA Chan comes in and does really well as a second round pick for them. Like, Jalen Waddle's already in the building. Like, you have these pieces for Tua to play with, and it just has that ceiling of no playoff wins, no real run being made, and we're just going to be in purgatory if we keep doing it this way. So when you're in a situation where you have that element of QB purgatory and you have made the decision to bench him, there's no going back. Like, 2026, Tua is gone. He's either being cut, or maybe there's a possibility where he retires because of the amount of concussions and injuries he's had throughout his career. But you've got to get a look at what you've got in the room, and you have spent however minimal the cost being a 7th round draft pick. You have to have a look at whether Quinn Ewers is the guy moving forward, or whether he can even be the guy moving forward, right? Like, I know over the past couple of years you've had, obviously Brock Purdy, but Mr. Irrelevant, in fact, and he managed to force his way as a starting quarterback. But that's one instance. There is also the Ridders and the Malik Willises and the Will Levises and the non-first round quarterbacks that get a chance to start. Heck, Sam Howell, like, the guys that get a chance, maybe go into a camp known as starting quarterback just to see whether they have it, and they end up not having it. But in this situation, it's better than the alternative of having an expensive quarterback, which just isn't going to get you where you want to go eventually. Especially when you're a Miami Dolphins team that is the longest drought in American team sports of playoff wins, or I believe in the NFL at least, maybe not American team sport, but they haven't won one since 2000, and I wasn't born then, so I can't really remember it, obviously. And the fact that that is even how long the drought is kind of tells you a lot about the thirst for playoff success as a Miami Dolphins fan. So when it comes to the outlook, for next year, Tua, he's going to be cut in the offseason, or at least his contract isn't going to be on the books. There's going to be a bunch of dead money to deal with, most likely with a post-June 1 cut. So that can be sort of managed, and you can stomach it, basically, right? Like, you look at what the Broncos, were able to do when they binned off Russell Wilson because he had that big deal. You had the ability to still compete because you made the draft picks and you made the roster be able to be suitable for a young quarterback, a cheap quarterback, which I think is the most important thing when it comes to maintaining a competitive outfit, is that when you have such a hindrance with a bunch of dead money on your cap, that your quarterback is serviceable and cheap. So if Quinn Ewers is able to be that guy, great. But when you're a team that is currently, as we sit here, $11 million over the cap for 2026, and then you have to consider the culling of Tua Tagovailoa, you have to find ways in which to, save money. And ways to save money, as I sit here on overthecap.com, is you're able to save 30 mil. You pre-June 1, you cut Tyreek, you cut Bradley Chubb, you get to about 20 mil under the cap, and then you consider other cuts and restructures like Minka Fitzpatrick, who they brought in pre-season in that Jalen Ramsey trade. You can restructure his deal. You can find, ways to just shed money, especially with, the free agents that you're letting go. There aren't any big ones. Maybe a Darren Waller, if you can convince him to come back for a cheap deal. But there are ways to stomach it, as we've seen. Whether they have the capability to do it, I'm not sure. We'll have to see how Quinn Ewers plays this weekend, because it kind of rests on him to whether they can still be a competitive outfit going into next year. Unless you consider, again, kind of a shot in the dark and hope it sticks when it comes to a late round quarterback, because they're currently 10th, I believe, in the draft order as it stands. Maybe we'll see how you are at the end of the season. If you can sneak into that top 10, maybe make a trade up if any of the teams above would be open to it. Obviously, the Giants currently hold the number 1 overall pick. They have their quarterback. You look at the Jets, to be fair, that's divisional actually, so the Jets wouldn't be wanting to deal with a division rival, especially to hand them a potential quarterback of the future. But you see what I mean in terms of, kind of hoping things fall into place for you to be able to stomach it for the next 2 years while you've got that load of dead money. Because when you made the decision to bench him, unless you're a situation like Atlanta where your second in command was a top 10 pick, you're not really having that easy transition, or let's say it was an easy transition. I'll say it was an easy transition for the Falcons, but at least you have something that you can sell to a fan base as well. We've drafted this guy in the top 10, so, Kirk's not playing well. We're going to bring in Penix because we've invested enough in him. You as a 7th round pick, you can't really sell that unless he shows on the field that he is actually capable of being an NFL quarterback and a solid starter in the league. So when it comes to the draft and when it comes to potentially picking someone in the mid rounds, because there are only really, as we sit here, 2 first round quarterbacks that are touted as such, or at least you could again, sell to a fan base, sell to a locker room, which is the most important thing, that, okay, this is someone that we're going to run with for the foreseeable, then, it's going to be a tough sledding going into the future for the Miami Dolphins. And let me actually, quote a mate of mine who I was messaging last night, because obviously the Dolphins, Matt McDaniel made the quote of everything's on the table for the quarterback position, so I wanted to get his thoughts on the matter, and his thoughts were, quote, shout out Jack, by the way, concussion seemed to have broken him, referring to Tua, has to stay next year, well, turns out he's not, hope he gets worse so he can draft Arch number 1 in 27 because he's staying in school for 26. Not sure about McDaniel though, feel like he deserves a shot with a new cool QB, but would have to be in 2 years' time. Well, luckily, that's not going to be in 2 years' time for you, mate. It seems like you'll get the new quarterback next year. It's not going to be Arch. It's not going to be, because he's 6 and 8. Yeah, you're not really going to be in that top 5, top level. So you're going to have to hope maybe someone emerges like Dart did later on to be a later round pick or late first rounder. But regardless, it's a hit and hope of you as being the guy, or heck, we cut Cousins and then you maybe give the guy a cheeky 10 mil and then you move on from there. But yeah, it's gonna be a long road for the Miami Dolphins. But one thing I very much say, it is better to be in the QB wilderness than QB purgatory. So now you're out of the situation where you're just going to be middling in with Tua, and you can actually look at what you've got and move forward and say, okay, let's find our new franchise guy. And heck, who knows, maybe Quinn Ewers can be that guy, but again, 7th round pick, I doubt it. Alright, it's time for my favourite section and yours. It's time for the Pick 6. Yes, it's that time of the week where I pick 6 games against the spread and get them right because I'm a smart ass, or at least I'm supposed to get them right. It wasn't a good week last week. Jesus, week 15, what was it? So I got 16, 17 and 18 to get myself back over 500. It's looking ropey. It's not looking great. It's 2 and 4 last week, with overall of 40 and 49. So yeah, it's slim pickings. It's not good tidings we bring in this Christmas season, but we got time. We got time on the clock, and we're gonna recover. I believe in myself. We believe. All right, that's what's gonna happen. Okay, so it's just before we go into next week, let's move on to last week and kind of get a where we went wrong, where it all went wrong. So first up, we get Chargers plus 4.5 get at the Chiefs. I thought the Chiefs would win, but I thought the 4.5 line as underdogs for the Chargers was way too much, and it proved to be the case. It was another tight game, even though the Chargers won outright, which is great for me. It was a 3-point game, so it was always going to be a tight one, even if the Chiefs maybe made their way back into it. It was very much good for me. One of the 2 wins there. Second, Giants minus 1.5 versus the Commanders. They had that light chance at the end, but Washington looked quite comfortable throughout the season. It's almost like the Giants players are like, well, we've got the number 1 overall pick, let's not screw it up for the future of the franchise, even though obviously players don't think like that. But they clearly weren't able to get the job done at home to the Commanders. Got swept by them in the season series. Not like it matters for either team, to be honest. Next up, Browns plus 7.5 at the Bears. Thought trap game. The Packers, the San regime, 2 Packers games for the Bears. You're thinking, okay, coming off a good Shador performance as well, but still with the loss that you could, cause a scare. Myles Garrett could, cause some issues, which he did. He's now 21.5 sacks for the season, so he's one off the all-time record in a season. So it'll be interesting to see whether he's able to break that next weekend. But in terms of the game, 3 picks from Shador, not good. even though one of them, Jerry Jeudy's got to do better and not get his pocket picked by Jalen Johnson. But alas, 31-3, not even a close one to begin with, in all honesty. Next up, so a very interesting one here. Panthers -2.5 at the Saints. With the division control in your hands, you bottle it and get swept in the season series by the 2025 Saints. I mean, I never thought, oh god, like the NFC South, man. It is obviously, as a fan of an NFC South team, as you can tell by the Falcons displays behind me, but Jesus Christ, like you're up 10 with 5 minutes left in the game. Just hold on. It's the 2025 Saints, and you just simply can't. And Charlie Smythe, shout out the International Pathway Program, Irish dude, kicker for the Saints, gets the win there to end it. It's right down the middle, and heck, the Panthers and Bucks play each other twice to end the year, so that is for all the marbles first to that series this weekend. So we'll see how that plays out. But Jesus, I just watching that game and I was like, come on. Like I'm like, even with the Falcons on Thursday, I'm almost rooting for the Panthers. Like, you know what, we helped you there. Just take advantage. Just can't. So tough one for any Panthers fan watching, I'm sure. The second win for the weekend, Niners -12.5 against the Titans, because they're the Titans, and the Niners off the bye, in their groove, moving into what is a very important end of the season for them. Very much in the 1 seed sweepstakes, let alone just the NFC West sweepstakes. So, should be a very interesting end to the season for them, but very good win. 10 wins for them on the year, with more to come. So, yeah, very interesting there. And Lions +5.5 at the Rams. I thought with the mini bye and that game going into the second half was again a very tight one, going back and forth, very shootouty tendencies in there, going band for touchdowns. But in the second half, the Rams, even without Devontae Adams for a good portion of it, were able to steady themselves and get a very comfortable win for them in the end. And yeah, look very very on job going into a Thursday night against the Seattle Seahawks, which, yeah, in terms of the division, and the 1 seed is almost for all the marbles. So that would be a very interesting one to watch from both sides. So that's last week's, and on to this week's, the pick 6. First up, I'm just going to throw out to notes down what I've got here. But first up, Bears +1.5 at home to the Green Bay Packers. Just think the Bears are a good team. The offense is humming. The running game maintains itself. They will be very motivated to get the win after losing at Lambeau Field. Want to maintain control of the NFC North, and it's also a very interesting scenario for the Packers because it'll be their first game without Micah Parsons. And I do recall before the season not really fancying the Packers that much, but when that Micah deal was made, it felt like, okay, this is the elite piece, the game changer, the guy in the games near the end of the season, in the playoffs, to be the game changer for them. And now, obviously, he tore his own ACL. Like, he will not be there for the Packers when you give up 2 first-round picks for these types of games at the end of the season. So I very much feel like, after last week when I very much pounded the table for the Packers, that when they're at their best, no one can beat them. And the unfortunate thing is, because of the injuries, because of bad luck, they won't be at their best. And that's a real killer for them when it comes to the Super Bowl hopes and the playoff hopes. But this feels like Chicago can, put another marker down and say, yeah, this is a new era with Ben Johnson. Let's show up what we are. So +1.5 as underdogs at home. Feel pretty good with that one for Chicago to get the job done there. Second, Bills -10 at home. On the road to the Cleveland Browns. Bills need it. Browns don't. Browns got no real fight in terms of that receiving core. In terms of, I don't believe the defense can stop the Bills' prolific running game. I'm not sure Judkins can have a decent outing, but it feels like there's just too much between the two teams. It's like quite a chasm in quality when you look at what the Bills are capable of and what the Browns are capable of. So I do believe the -10. You could argue the cold weather, but this is Buffalo Bills talking about. They play in cold weather, so I don't see the Browns, even with being at home, having that great an advantage that the Bills will be unable to show what they are. So I'm happily taking the -10 with the Bills there. Next, Vikings -3 at home to the Giants. Again, the Giants are just out on their feet, lifeless at the minute when it comes to themselves and just competing in general. And JJ McCarthy is in a position where he needs to show what he's about, that he is a quality starter in the NFL. He did a very good job of that last week on Sunday Night Football against the Cowboys. You've got Jordan Addison, you've got Justin Jefferson. Just still, roster-wise, players-wise, the Vikings are better than the Giants. So it seems like it's just a scenario where I think the Vikings get the win there, and a decently comfortable one in the grand scheme of things. So pretty comfortable taking that line. Next up, Broncos -3 home to the Jags. Again, I think last week was a real kind of, again, laying a marker down, statement win at home to the Packers, a team that obviously feeding themselves off a Chicago win. Broncos, Bo Nix playing that much better. The defense getting pressure. The Jaguars offensive line that, has frailties and can be got at least Broncos can get at anyone, if we're being honest. So I feel like the -3 line in Mile High, it's an advantage that the Broncos, who do need this win for one seed purposes, because the Jags are a competitor for it, they are a dark horse for that, so they won't be taking the Jaguars lightly at all, and getting the field goal win, I feel very confident they're able to do so. So that's the Broncos pick. After that, we've got Texans -14.5 against the Raiders. So you can see why I'm going with this, because it's the Raiders and they're awful. So, I mean, you look at what happened last week in Philadelphia, they couldn't lay a glove, got 75 total yards. They got that 30 odd plays, I believe, was the total for them. If you think the Eagles defense is tough, think about the Texans defense in NRG Stadium on the road. I think if the Texans get to 21, this covers, because the Raiders aren't getting more than 6. They're not getting a touchdown. They may get they're not laying a glove on the Texans. And we saw last week the Texans can handle bad teams with regards to the Cardinals, and the offense can put points on bad teams, which the Raiders most definitely are. So that's an easy one there. And the 6th pick, for the pick 6, 49ers -6 on the road to the Colts. Monday Night Football, plain and simple. Phillip Rivers is not having 2 consecutive competitive games off the couch. I know it was a very shoddy there going into it. Seattle obviously had the big line themselves and were on the ropes to admit it, but I think with an old body, you're only getting more worn down. You're not getting healthier because you've now played and you've gone into the swing of things. It's only gonna get downhill from here. And the 49ers team, which again has their own ambitions, has their own things to do, and the offense that's is marshaled by a much greater offensive mind in Kyle Shanahan, you're not going to have a Colts defensive performance like they did last week to keep them in the game. It's going to be on Phillip Rivers to keep up with the 49ers, and I just don't see that being possible. So the -6, more than a touchdown, minus the extra point game, I feel comfortable siding with the 49ers there. And that's the Pick 6. Then that's the DNP podcast, episode 19, or next week's 20. Come on, let's push it. Let's keep going. Let's subscribe to the boy so we can keep pushing these out. Keep, supporting the boy, because this is very proud of what I've been able to do here, and I hope to be able to continue doing it for many, many more editions. And thank you for listening. Thank you for getting this far. Like, rate, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff. So keep up to date with each upload. And have a good week. Enjoy the football. Bye bye.